All right, so the last recording for this week will be osmoregulation. This is out of chapters, some of the pages out of chapter 44. The rest of that stuff will be talked about later when we talk about metabolism for some of the labs. But anyway, so a tardigrade, this is an example of a remarkable animal. Sometimes they're called water bears, and they will hydrate and dehydrate. They have been known to last 10 years without food and water. They've been taken out in space, put in space, brought back into the vehicle, brought back, rehydrated, and they reproduce. These things, amazing, hard to kill. So anyway, what we want to do is look at some of the processes animals use to regulate their water. And so we'll go through that real quickly. And here's this hyperosmotic, isoosmotic, and hypoosmotic. What I want you to realize is we have the selectively permeable membrane. If the solutes can't move, here we have osmosis occurring, and I want you to notice the net flow of water. That flow of water goes from where the highest water molecules are to the lowest. So you've got to get this understanding, and we're going to practice this in class. I think this is one of the things we'll do this week. Okay, so what I need you to know is water will always move from hypo to hyper. If you can remember that and figure out what hypo means and hyper, then you're in good shape. So hypo means below. A hypodermic needle goes under the skin. So that means it has less solutes. That term is always talking about the solute concentration. Iso means the same, so it has exactly the same amount of solutes. And then hyper means it has too much, like a hyperactive child. There's one bouncing off the walls. We don't use that term anymore. We have a bunch of letters to go after that. But anyway, so again, if you can remember, water always will move from hypo to hyper. That is a way to go. But we'll do some practice ones on these this week. All right, I do want you to know what's happening to the fish. And again, I really kind of want you to know what's going on in the white of this. And I think this is also something that I don't need to walk you through it, I don't think. You can kind of read this, but we'll talk about this kind of in class a little bit. All right, so make sure that you can describe all this for a test. And then we also have the freshwater fish. So I'll also be able to describe all this. And then the last one I want to talk about and spend a little bit of time on is nitrogenous waste, mostly coming from proteins that we break down, but also from nucleic acids. And so what happens is nitrogen builds up in our system, and we need to get rid of that. This is why a high protein diet, if you are an athlete, that's okay, provided that you are smart about the way you do things. But all those protein powders and stuff, you got to make sure that you have lots of water so you don't blow out your kidneys. And it can cause too much protein can actually cause issues. But here's what we want to do. We want to look at how we get rid of this kind of waste, nitrogenous waste. And what you have to realize is there's three different methods, and all have advantages and disadvantages, and that's kind of what I want you to key in on. All right, so if you look, the three types are right there kind of in the middle. It's ammonia, urea, and uric acid. Those are the three amino groups and ways that you can get rid of these wastes. Now, if you look at ammonia, ammonia is a very small molecule, and that's really how these things are broken into, is into ammonia. The problem with ammonia, what you need to know, is it's highly toxic. And we use ammonia as a disinfectant, and there's a reason for it. So it's not something you can store in your body. And so that's exactly what happens, is the only animals that really can use it is they have a large source of water, constant water, that they can use to flush the ammonia out of the system. All right, the next one is urea. You see that in mammals and sharks and some bony fish. Urea is a larger molecule. It is less toxic. It can be stored in our system with some water for a longer period of time. And that's why we have a bladder, and it works. So it is less toxic. So that is the advantage. The disadvantage is, though, our body now has to spend energy in converting that ammonia into urea. And then the last one, uric acid, is a lot bigger molecule. And again, it can be stored in the system, but it takes a lot more energy to convert, but again, less toxic. And the key here is if it's less toxic, it's stored in the body, but it can be stored with less water. And so you see this in reptiles, insects, land snails, things that have removed themselves from water. They've figured out a way to kind of get away with that. Now you think of birds, birds can fly to water. So what's the problem? Why don't they? I mean, they evolved from a reptilian ancestor as we did. Why haven't they shifted? And that comes down to weight. Everything birds do is to drop weight. And they do not want to carry that extra water around in flight. So that white, if you've ever seen bird poop, it's kind of whitish with a kind of a brown green inside. The white part is the uric acid. The brownish part is actually the fecal matter. All right, and then the last one we want to talk about is my favorite. This is a kangaroo rat. These guys are awesome. They're one of the better animals dealing with water losses, so we want to use them. They're a local species. There's lots of different species. More of them are kind of desert, toward the desert area. Hard to find them around here. Actually, I don't think you're going to find them right here in kind of Walnut and surrounded areas, but you can find them in Riverside all the way out to the deserts. And they have techniques that they can use to deal with water. And so I've got this little handout I like. And what happens is they're smart. So when it's really hot outside, they're not out there. They come out at night, and then they spend most of their time in burrows where it's quite a bit cooler. So that will help them hold on to moisture. It turns out they don't drink water. And here's the key. They don't have to drink water. They can go their whole lives. They can get all their water from dry seeds. It's metabolic water. They will drink. Don't get me wrong. You put them in captivity and you offer them water, they will take it if they, but they don't really need it. And so that's another thing. Respiratory moisture. I love it. They have these very long noses. And what happens is when they breathe out, we lose moisture. We have lots of moisture in our lungs for oxygen to diffuse across. Well, when we breathe out, we lose a lot of our moisture from breathing. And what happens is these guys, because they have such a long nose, the water actually condenses on the nasal passages above, drips down, and then they swallow it. So kind of like a post-nasal drip. Kind of cool. The urine is highly concentrated in the loop of Henle. And so there is a nephron. This is the big kidney structure. I'm not going to make you learn it for this class, but your kidneys have thousands upon thousands of these things. But here's the part called the loop of Henle. It's this one part. And this is where a lot of the water and salts are regulated. And so what I want you to know is that section is longer in them than any other species comparative to their size. So they have an extremely long loop of Henle, so they can suck every drop of moisture out. And then when they poop, their feces is really dehydrated. And if you play with kangaroo rat poop, and I start questioning your sanity when you do. But if you see it, it is extremely almost pasty, and when you touch it, it's like dust. And because of this process. So very, very cool. And so just kind of giving you, ingested food, how much water ingested in liquid? 0. So derived from metabolism. So they're gaining average water 2 milliliters a day. We're going through 250. And you can see the evaporation. They're on a positive trend. They're doing really, really well. Whereas we suck. Yeah. So anyway, you can go. You won't last 3 days without water. These guys can go their entire life. So you're all going to die. And with that, we end the recordings for the week on a happy note.